All right, you're unmuted.
A lot of moisture in it. I mean, you could just about see.
Did you look at the long term? I was supposed to be like 65 the one day.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I'm ready for nice weather too.
I am, but at least we've been getting sun.
I know.
Oh,
The
thank
sun is helpful.
And the birds are also.
Horses are shedding.
All right, call this meeting to order. This is Benzie County Board of Commissioners Special Study Session. Today is March 28th, 2023. We are in the Frank Walter House Boardroom. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Here.
Janot,
Here.
Markey is absent, Nye,
Here.
Roloffs,
Here.
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki is absent.
Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions?
Motion to approve as presented.
I'll support. I feel like there was something that we were gonna add to this. You and I were having a conversation the other day.
Add or take away?
I don't.
You know what,
recall.
the fact that it's not, let's just pass.
Okay.
It wasn't mentioned to me,
To
so
approve the agenda, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Moved. Minutes from February 28th.
And this one would still call the committee.
Okay, Committee of the Whole.
I don't remember seeing it. It needs to be changed. Janot makes a motion to approve as presented.
I'll support.
Or is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move. Is there any public comment today? Close public comment. And we'll get right to our human resources update with Ms. Jackie Pelfy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just provided a little handout of everything that's a quick overview of what's going on in HR. We have several new employees. I started from the beginning of 2023, just to give you an idea of what we have so far, and then I'll use this formatting going forward. It was really nice. Christine set it up, and I'll just, instead of reinventing the wheel, I'll just use it because it's very nice and helpful. So we have several new employees, 5 work comp claims since the beginning of the year. All of them have been settled. We've also we completed a work comp premium audit. We haven't received the results of that audit, but it has been completed. So I was very excited about that. ACA reporting was complete for 2022. 3 FMLA leaves have occurred since the beginning of the year. 2 have ended, and then 1, it's an intermittent for one of our employees. Policies and procedures, Rose and I are continuing to work on the policies. We'll actually have 2 more in April, and then hopefully a large amount in May coming to you. We're hopeful to have this done. I know we wanted it the first quarter, but it'll hopefully be the first half of the year. We anticipate a completed personnel policy. And then some upcoming things are policies, budget season. We're going to be starting in that. There's going to be a MERS event for all employees on June 8th, and that's going to be handling the DC and the DB plans. I plan on recording it just in case some employees can't make it, so we'll have that available, and I'll send it out via email afterwards. Job description updates are ongoing, and then we're going to be starting discussions about union changes for the final reopener. That's just a quick overview of what's going on. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
This is more curiosity than anything,
Sure.
but 5 workman comp claims, which department, or is that from like the corrections, or is that from law enforcement? What are the claims? I'm curious. Workman comp claims, it's.
What can you
Sure.
share about?
Well, I can't really share too much about the claims explicitly. I can tell you it's not from one particular department. It's from a variety of department that it occurs in their work. It's not anything that's astronomical. It's just something where if an injury occurs during the employment, we send them. And if it could be something as simple as, falling or getting injured in different ways. So I don't want to be too explicit, but there isn't anything that's over the top where it's going to be some long-term commitment. It's just something where especially if in my opinion, if an employee feels like they're debating on whether to go or not, I always say go. And then the other thing is just because we've had 5 work comp claims doesn't necessarily mean all of these people sought treatment. It's very important if anything happens on county property that it's reported. And then, so we always have something to refer back to in case something happens in the future where, let's say they hurt their finger and then 2 months later, they're saying that I can't shake this, it's still injured. We have that original form on file. So it's just very important. A lot of it is just more to have on record. They're not always seeking treatment.
I got a paper cut. I cried about it.
Because I could understand if
Talk about it.
you're in law enforcement. But I mean, otherwise, most people have administrative type jobs. And I'm thinking, how can you, what is the workman comp claim? But what I just heard you say is you may have said there's 5 claims since the beginning of the year, but that doesn't mean all 5 of them were validated and they're on workman's comp.
No, this just means 5 work comp claims were reported.
Yeah, report.
So
Oh,
not saying that we're on the hook for any, it's more of just reported to our office and I submitted the report. It only extends a little bit further if they seek treatment. And then oftentimes the treatment is taken care of and then it's a non-issue after that. Rarely do you have something that's continual or ongoing when it comes to a work comp claim, or if anyone's on some sort of extended leave, you don't see that very often either due to a work comp.
who makes the final call on whether a workman comp's claim is valid or not?
We have a third party. It is Comp One that takes care of that. So thankfully not me. We submit the information and they make the determination.
Good enough. Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jackie.
Let's go on to our topics for continued discussion, and we will have our discussion regarding childcare. And this originated, I believe, with, it originated with the idea that we are lacking in those services in the county, and I believe Commissioner Cunningham forwarded an email,
Mhm.
which I'll let you take it from here.
So the idea was to talk about how we can support or add to or bolster childcare in Benzie County. It's been tossed out a few times throughout the last year at the board level. How can we impact childcare in Benzie County? It's been tossed out about, do we have a Benzie County like employee childcare? Do we support private businesses? Do we support for-profit businesses? Or do we, at one point it was thrown out, do we buy Betsy Hosick and have a childcare there and do a $1 lease? And so I wanted to have this discussion, and I know Commissioner Cunningham did as well, about, what impact does Benzie County want to have on childcare? How do we want to support it? Childcare was in the top 3 of the ARPA survey results. And we did hear from Ashley from Thompsonville for her childcare person. And then we did have the 2 folks here this morning who are looking for potential funding to help, build a new childcare place in Frankfurt. And so I just wanted to have the discussion. Where is the board leaning? Do we want to have a say in childcare at all? Do we want to support it? Do we want to give money? Or, what are we looking to do?
I'd like to know if this is going to open the door for other private entities to come knocking on the door. I
Mhm.
mean, undersheriff got in a car accident last year. How long was his truck laid up? 6 months to repair. So lack of parts. And the body shops were just so darn busy.
Yeah.
So I can see somebody coming and say, well, if you're helping over here, what about me? I need to add on to my building.
Right.
Where do we say yes and where do we say no?
Yeah, if they excuse me.
I didn't mean to make you mad.
Just
So
go
what are
away.
you limited by? I mean, you have a little bit more knowledge on this, in this area than I believe any of us at this table. So what would it look like to have something in this building for staff? I mean, we are seeing a shift
Mhm.
where it might be necessary, and it'd be a wonderful service to provide to employees, but I don't know what that looks like.
So there's a lot of models you can look at. There's a lot of ways that you could approach childcare for your staff. It's not as prevalent here in Northern Michigan, because we're typically behind the ball in a lot of ways for changing in society. It's very prevalent in other cities, bigger cities, that employers offer childcare of some sort. Whether that's an infant in the workplace program, they follow a traditional model of childcare where they go through all the proper licensing and they have somebody who actually runs the daycare, or they do a Plamondon approach. And the Plamondon approach is Plamondon. They actually do, they have a space in their building for staff to bring their children, and you can't leave the campus. So there's a lot of, when you do childcare, there's a lot of licensing that happens at the state level. Crazy amounts of licensing. And if you have children or infants, there's additional licensing specifically for ground level and wheels on cribs and fencing and all those things. The Plamondon model actually steps away from a lot of that licensing, because licensing is specific that if the parent is on campus at all times and has some form of oversight of it, licensing doesn't apply in some ways. And so if you carried a model with you're going to provide space, then the parent could never leave campus, and there's less licensing that's incurred for that. If you wanted to do the full-fledged daycare, I would strongly urge in not hiring a bunch of daycare people, but contracting with an agency like the lady who was here this morning who runs a daycare. You contract with an agency to actually run the business. You provide the space. And so what we were proposing downtown was the lower level cafeteria of the governmental center, which used to be a public cafeteria back in the day. It wasn't used. There would be maybe one staff person in there once a day having lunch. It was a very underutilized space. And so how we were proposing it is we would provide the space to a daycare provider. The provider would come in and actually provide the service, and we would just simply be providing that space for the employees' children. It would eventually be opened up to the public. So if there was no employees who had children at the time for a specific space, there would be like a waiting period, and then it would go to a public space, public infant or toddler space. But that would be the county supplementing that by simply providing the space with like $1 lease or something like that. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat. There really is. If you want to provide space, we could do that. But we got to find the space. We got to decide the model we want to find. That downtown, it caught a lot of traction, but Grand Traverse County, because I was with the city, and we had to work together because the city owns 32% of the building and the county owns 68% of the building. It's a real convoluted story. And the county had other ideas they thought potentially they could use that space for instead. And so we didn't go that way. But in order to help our employees, what we implemented was an infant in the workplace program. And what that program did was allow a parent to bring their child to work up until 6 months old or mobile. So you get 12 weeks off on FMLA. And then you have that gap. It's very hard to find space for the younger children in childcare. Once you get a little older, it's easier to find space. And the reason for that is it costs so much more money to watch a baby versus a toddler that they kind of tend to go towards toddlers because they make more money off them. You have to have more people employed for infants. So one professional can only watch 2 infants, whereas with a toddler, it goes up to like 6 kids. And so people kind of sway away from infants. So there's an infant issue. And so what we had did downtown is say, okay, you could bring your infant to work as long as the baby wasn't a disruption, as long as your boss says it was okay, and as long as you had people backup help. So David, my son, was the first baby, and I had backup help. And then Emma was not far off that. And there's been multiple babies ever since. That baby comes to work a couple days a week. If they cry for more than like 10, 15 minutes, you got to go home for the day. And you had other staff persons who would assist you. So if you had a meeting that was going to last an hour, another staff person would have that baby in their office, sleeping in a bouncer or what have you. It worked very well. They've had 4 or 5 infants now graduate from the program in Traverse City. So that's an option as well. Haggerty does something similar to that. I know Britton Banner was talking about doing something similar to that. I don't know if it was ever implemented. Tent Craft does something similar to the Infant in the Workplace program, so it's not uncommon. Munson has a daycare facility that they provide. It's for staff and the community specifically. They have a 3-year waiting list and they're the largest daycare in Grand Traverse County. But I know it's very, very expensive. And the hospital really doesn't provide anything but the space. And then the daycare funds itself. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. It's just a matter of how do you want to go about it if you do. If that's not something that we want to do, ways we can potentially impact childcare is coming up with some sort of grant program and somebody to help administer the grant program for mini grants per se for different childcare providers. So I know the Human Services Collaborative works through some childcare issues. You know, if we wanted to task them with say, hey, here's $10,000. We want you to grant this to childcare providers in Benzie County to help them, you know, get a step forward. That's something we could do. That's kind of how Grand Traverse County is doing it with some ARPA dollars, is grant funding. They're giving grant funding to organizations to expand childcare operations. So it's just a matter of what direction we want to take. Do we want to focus on the community? What do we want to kind of sway towards focusing on staff services? You know, where do you want to lead?
How much of a need is it here as a staff? No?
Other than myself, Rose, and a few people up the hill, there's not a lot of babies right now. But we are in this we're really in the middle of a transition in Benzie County where we're going to start having more of that. I mean, you'll see the Register of Deeds office, both of those young ladies in there. You know, and so as we continue to have retirements and we know of other retirements coming up, it'll shift. It did downtown. When I started in Traverse City in 2011, I was the youngest person in the building. By the time I left with my 3 kids, I wasn't near the youngest person. So it's very cyclical in local governments and in organizations. You have all the babies and then it kind of goes away and then they come back again.
That would take me a while to get adjusted to. I mean, when you talk about having backup people, that means people who are being paid to do their job are actually on standby to take care of somebody else's child, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, we have to be cognizant of the people who come to work, don't necessarily want to be around children.
Right.
It's probably not a very popular thing to voice when something like this is being proposed.
So we did an anonymous survey to the city staff, and overwhelmingly the support was there. So that was why we did it. And you had to work with your department head. If the department head said absolutely not for good reason, well, it didn't work. And it obviously didn't work for people outside of administrative. So, you know, DPS, police department, they weren't really eligible to have infant in the workplace, you know, for safety reasons. You can't have a baby in the cruiser. Yeah. So it was also limited. It was also limited to certain positions as well. It was a more of administrative clerical folks. And your backup people, the idea was that you weren't taken away from your work fully and babysitting the child. The idea of 6 months or until mobile is that's when babies are typically quieter and easier. They kind of sleep a lot. Baby Emma if you wrapped her around your chest, you didn't know she was there. She'd sleep a 3-hour meeting. And so it just depends. And if the baby was fussy, you got to go home. That was the rules.
So did you have any background information on the folks who presented earlier today? Did you know they were coming? Do you know anything about, because my assumption is that's a private endeavor. That is, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't a nonprofit in any way or something that, okay.
That appeared to be a for-profit endeavor. But I don't know much about it.
Engler, when Engler was here, and then he had the lady that has her own private in-home, I think it's across from Paul Oliver, that house there. And Dan Engler was or is looking at the Betsy Hosick building. And I had mentioned when he said that, because I went to those meetings to find out what was happening there. As far as it being sold from Munson, Paul Oliver. And at that point in time, he was thinking of having a fitness center, but I didn't know this. That information they didn't really share publicly or officially. But then I was contacted and they said, what do you know about child care? And I said, I know it was one of our top 3 needs according to our survey.
Mhm.
And then they asked about, can it be for profit or nonprofit or how does it? And I said, well, come and present, what your ideas are, or at least educate. I know it's a need that, without giving any judgment on it, but I said, I know it's a need for the county. And so that's why he was here with the other person. So from what I gathered from what he presented to all of us this morning was that the lady that has her own personal one, kind of in a home setting, I guess.
It's a center, but it's in that
It
hall
is,
across the
it
street
is a
next to
house,
Station
but-
3.
Yeah, I've passed it many times.
It's next door to Station 3. They have quite a few kids. They primarily have Paul Oliver children.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
is it only a childcare center or does someone actually live there?
To my knowledge, it's just childcare, and I don't
Okay.
think anyone lives there.
Or it's a house that was turned into a private
Mhm.
childcare center
Correct.
or the hospital
Mhm.
mostly.
Yeah.
So when he asked that idea, I said, just come and educate because that is a need in the county. So that's the type of information. I said, do your research before you come. Know that if you have 0 to 12-month-old, you have to have a 1-to-3 ratio or whatever it
1 to
is.
2.
1-to-2 ratio as far as employees. And I said, the lady that has her private, she has some people that can work with her team, because that's a hard thing too, finding people as employees to take care of the children. So it was just to, he's thinking of different ways to use that center, because I did mention when he said that, I said, Stefan's, the dentist office next door used to be a childcare center in the last century. As I remember that, and you can still see the little gated area off to the side of it. But anyways, I also said, well, look at any kind of regulations with having a childcare at the end of the airport. I don't know if it's grandfathered in or if it's, I said, you just do your homework before. So he would like to offer something, from what I understand, that would fulfill a need, but isn't sure how to do it. He wants it to be for the community. Of course, he wants it to pay for itself too.
And that's the trouble with childcare, is in a lot of ways for it to pay for itself. Now you've outpriced our entire community. So
And to look at-
childcare centers on average are very expensive. Very expensive.
'Cause then you
Some of
have
them
that
are charging
insurance.
$80 to $85 a day for an infant. And that outprices Benzie County immediately.
So then I think that's the big issue there,
Mhm.
is resolving that. How can the price accommodate the need? And then there's, of course, shift workers. So
Mhm.
are you a 24-hour childcare?
Those are very uncommon.
I would think. But so I guess that would be the two issues I would bring up, is the childcare, but is there a way the county can help subsidize so it can be affordable for the people that need it?
I think a bigger issue, and when looking at this whole childcare thing, is that we have been approached as a board by 2 private entities, and the EDC has been approached by a private developer. So we have 3 private entities in total who have said we're interested in helping with the childcare issue in the community. So at that level, how do you choose? How do you say,
Right,
well, we would
exactly.
use ARPA funds to further your vision, but not the 2 of you?
Right.
I mean, it just makes it difficult to move forward with situations like that. So what's
Equitable way
what's an equitable way? What's
of
a big,
responding to that.
and should the county be involved in the solution of something like this? I mean, and we know it was identified as a need, but
Mhm.
not everything is a county issue. Do we want to have a role in this? Is there a room for a role for the county to assist? Or not?
I think if there was room for a role, it would be in the providing money to seed a grant to like the community foundation or the child or the human services collaborative with the Benzie County goal of this is for childcare. We wanted to support childcare in these ways, and then leave it up to that nonprofit to grant the money accordingly to an application. And then that kind of, we've now impacted childcare, but it's taken us out of being the winners and losers. Of picking the winners and losers, I should say. That might be a way to do it.
I would
If the
think
board
that-
feels passionate about somehow contributing to the childcare issue, I think that would be one of the easier ways to do it.
I think if we were gonna go that approach, we would want to know from that entity who was taking over the granting, if we gave you X amount of dollars, how many people could be impacted?
Sure.
What's, what does that look like?
Mhm.
If they could provide something like. Gentlemen?
If
Well, I
we're gonna
think-
go to a grant system, I would like this board to have final say on the grants. Not necessarily a private entity
Mhm.
handling the whole thing. I'm not crazy about it. There's ways, I know childcare is tough.
Yeah.
There's no ifs and buts about it, but we survived
Mhm.
one way or another. Yeah.
And see,
And it
that's the
happens, so-
frustration from parents now.
And yeah, I understand it, but I don't like handing over money to a private entity and saying this, because we've already picked winners and losers in the housing market,
Mhm.
and there's more out there.
Mhm.
Where do you draw the line? How far do you go? That's part of the ARPA funding, I think, is to put us on the spot versus anybody else.
Probably.
So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, but
To give her,
Does this grant have to be spent by 2026?
So yes,
right?
yeah, it's
Right.
got a ticker
Make a decision, you gotta get it out in the community.
because it makes them,
Making certain.
it makes the recipients now the sub grantee.
Of course, if you put it out to an agency that's gonna grant the money out, that'd probably fulfill their obligation because the money's been spent,
Mhm.
but maybe not dispersed yet.
You can't actually do an endowment.
Can or cannot.
Cannot.
Okay.
It has to be spent, it has to be actual spending that.
So here's kind of where I don't know the solution, but I know what doesn't feel right to me. Listening to Bob's comments, using a little different words, but I agree, you can't enrich anybody in the private sector. I
Mhm.
mean, I think there's even laws against that. You can't help them buy an asset that they're gonna benefit from the sale of that asset later on. That kind of narrows that down right away. I'm concerned about thinking that our solution to the question is taking care of the people at the county level, because I'm telling you, that's not what the county was. The people that responded to the survey, that's not what they were thinking at all.
Right,
They were thinking countywide.
Yeah, but if you can free up a few spaces.
right,
Frees up a few for them.
correct.
I get it, but we might potentially be subsidizing something where now somebody else, they're paying the full boat with a private provider. It just doesn't feel right to me at all. But again, I don't know the solutions to these things. In terms of
Mhm.
grant money, honestly, that's gonna be so short-lived.
Yeah.
So let's just say you put $80,000 into it, and based on what I'm hearing about the cost of healthcare or childcare, that we'd burn through that money in a hurry.
You
That
would,
was a very stopgap solution. There was no long-term solution there. So if we want to be part of the solution, I think we have to be thinking differently.
Mhm.
For one thing, I believe that part of our solution is that we're working with the state legislature to relax the rules.
Mhm.
That would be a big help right away. And I'm sure we could get a lot of counties that would want to jump on board with that.
And they've done that a bit. In-home daycares are now allowed to have 7 children, whereas before it was only 6 children. They have loosened some of the restrictions, and that was part of Jack O'Malley's big push when he was in Lansing, and he helped to really see that through with some of those loosened restrictions. So some of that is there. And they've done that in Lansing. They've also just announced that the lieutenant governor is working with federal funds for more childcare innovation and more money to come to Michigan as well. So there is state and federal money coming out as well for childcare. How easy or hard it's going to be to obtain for local childcare providers, I don't know. But the issue has been recognized, I think, at all levels. And so people are now starting to really work hard to get funding pools there.
And let's take your example. Let's say that there is more monies that come down the pipe. Our role probably is helping them access those monies by writing letters of support or
Yeah.
whatever it might be versus us writing a check to anybody.
Mhm.
Well, and if the money's coming, is it going directly to people who have children that need to be taken care of, kind of as
Right.
something, now you have money to pay for childcare? Or is it going to childcare businesses, providers?
It's my understanding that this recent federal money is providers to expand or grow their business. That's my understanding of some of the recent money is for that.
Okay,
But I think it's yet to be decided how those monies would actually be allocated.
Yeah,
that's what
And-
I'm saying.
And, indulge me here. Let's just throw some stuff against the wall, knowing that it probably can't happen, but it's worth discussing. Are we allowed locally, and I guess this is as much a question for you, Shelley, as anybody, would we be allowed locally to give some kind of tax break to people that have children in childcare?
I'm not aware. Yeah, that's
But it-
not really
Okay,
We collect real estate
right.
taxes, so.
and that couldn't, so again, I knew you throw something against the wall and it may not stick, but that's kind of the broader picture that I'm thinking.
Well, and I know the feds just re-implemented the increased dependent care credit again for next year's taxes
Okay,
because they recognize the issue with the 2022 filings so far. So it's my understanding that the increased dependent care credit was going back up for the next tax year,
okay, so land, is that at the state level then?
federal level.
Federal level?
You
Okay,
get a dependent care credit that you can, so like I pay so much in daycare, I can claim a portion of that on my taxes as a credit.
Okay.
And so they lowered it down to like $1,000 or $1,200 per child, but it was at like 3,000 per child during COVID. And it sounds like they're putting it back up at the federal level. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was around those numbers. But they're moving it back up now, I guess, for the next tax year.
okay.
The one time I watched the news.
But that doesn't answer
Yeah,
the
and
need of facilities.
yeah, that doesn't address the childcare desert issue. That's the term that's
Right.
frequently used at the state and
Point.
federal level is childcare deserts. And that won't address the childcare desert issue.
So you actually have two subjects you're talking about.
Mhm.
You're having about providers and cost. You're telling me that there's a lack of providers,
Correct,
and for those that are taking children in, the cost is pretty exorbitant.
correct.
I don't know how anybody pays $85 a day. per child.
About 25 a week.
Yeah. So it's, I
Yeah, I could-
sympathize with them, but
Yeah, there's childcare centers like in Williamsburg that are $85 a day for an infant. I paid $55 a day for an infant.
I'd bite into your paycheck pretty quick.
Husband. Her husband pays for it.
Oh,
No, he doesn't.
either way. It's discretionary spending that you don't get to spend some.
Well, and that's why so many people have no children or only one child these days. I mean, it's a big, broader issue if you think about it.
Right.
Younger folks are not having the children that they used to, or they're not having children at all.
So we don't have the solution ourselves,
No.
but maybe we can make a list of things that we know we don't want to support. And then just keep narrowing it down, because I think somewhere there's going to be this big picture solution. And I don't know what it is. I wish I did. But, and I'm going to speak only for myself here, but going back to what Bob said, I fully support that. The public sector shouldn't be subsidizing the private sector, because now who do I stop?
Right.
Who doesn't get it?
Don't set precedent.
With respect to the housing, I'm less concerned about that only because we only had one legitimate request. One group that was shovel ready to go, and So first come, first serve. I mean, it's not like we had 5 applicants, and we picked one. But, you know, we know that I don't think we want to own the building. So those are the things, maybe you do this in the reverse order. You
Mhm.
say, what don't I want to do?
Yeah,
And then we can concentrate on things that we don't know yet might be a solution.
It seems like owning the building would be the simplest. If you own the building and then the people, you simply own the building, whereas people who are trying to do their businesses, that's up to them to staff and figure out all the needs they have.
and that was the model we put together for downtown is the subsidy was essentially leasing the building for $1.
Gary, my immediate reaction to that is all about liability. You know, you've got young
Oh,
people on the premise, and even though we're not the provider, we're the deep pocket. Something happens, a child chokes to death. I mean, I don't want that responsibility.
They would have to sign waivers. So we went through this with the MML and Meadowbrook. They're the provider of insurance for the city of Traverse City. And there was specific things that you could put in place as protections to the city.
There's a lot of case law out there that tell you you cannot waive your rights.
Not completely,
Even
but
if you sign a document that says, I'm never gonna come to collect from you because I know what my risk is. The court, you just can't sign away your rights.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, maybe there's a way to manage it. I don't know.
I guess I go back to it's the top, one of the top 3 concerns and issues of our residents here in the county. So how can we as a county help resolve that for them?
It's when the woman came to us from Thompsonville, Alicia. Is that her name?
Ashley,
Ashley, and if you remember, we said, okay, what areas would you like help? She gave 4 different areas. None of them would have qualified. You know, she wanted like relief from her mortgage. Can't do.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember.
It's, and I understand, I appreciate the fact she put it together. Well, then can you help me with food? Well, there's a lot of agencies out there that'll help you with food. So right away, we were ticking off boxes that there is either another option for, it wasn't practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't appear as though we've been presented with a model that the county should intervene or partner with today. I mean, it is good news that we know that there are 3 private entities that are looking to expand or develop services, you know, on their own, who with assistance, perhaps they'll move forward without assistance. That's good news for the community. But not one of them checks the box where we could, in good conscience, say this is the good use of ARPA funds that we can support. I mean, I can't yet.
Either, I know somewhere there's a solution, as I keep saying. I just, not the guy that's gonna probably figure it out.
Yeah, just being such a big issue.
mhm,
Personally, and I'd said this some time ago, I think the place to start on this is to put together a group of professionals, childcare professionals, whether they be like working for the hospital or that young lady that's over in Thompsonville. I mean, these are the people that they're in it every day.
Yeah.
And I think that they can probably throw some stuff out there that might be worth considering. I mean, you're the only one with child care kids, you know, that would need it. I'm so far removed from that,
mhm,
but it's, so you gotta surround yourself with people that can really be helpful.
mhm.
So is there something we can maybe come up with today as a step 1?
Well, I already said, for me, the suggestion would be is develop the list of things that you can't do. And then if you want to take it the next step, develop an ad hoc committee or an advisory committee, very limited in length. Bring them in the room, bring in a facilitator, could be any of us facilitating, and let's find out what's on their minds. They know what the roadblocks are.
Yeah.
I could reach out to Chris Forsyth and see So Grand Traverse County gave grants to childcare as part of their ARPA. I can ask Chris what they used as their rating mechanism for childcare. So like specifically, they awarded $235,000 to Pine Grove Church to build a childcare center, to expand their childcare center. So it's not that we can't do it, we just have to figure out the right way to do it.
And again, you can build something, but if you don't have the staff, kind of pointless to build anything.
I think Pine Grove has one. I think it was to expand it.
For what it's worth, by the way, I see that the old loan center at Honor Bank is back on the market. And I couldn't help but think what the opportunities could be there for childcare when I was driving past it. Because I know this gentleman that was in presenting earlier today, I've heard, and I'm not good. I'm not gonna tell you I know this for a fact, but I had heard that if the property changes in the hands out there, that the FAA really will restrict what can go in there because of their proximity to the airport.
And that's why I brought that up. I said, do your research on that because I don't know if it's
Center to Frankfurt.
grandfathered in.
Yeah, it bounced.
Yeah,
I was talking with the Betsy, Bentley,
Betsy would say
Yeah.
health fitness.
and I'm never gonna tell an investor what they should or shouldn't invest in. But if he doesn't know that yet and you're in contact with him,
Mhm.
tell me better explore that.
Well, and that was one of my, suggestions to him. I said, you're in the proximity of the airport. I don't know what the regulations are or grandfather did, just do your homework. And of course, he's an investor, so he would.
Okay. Get to the end of the conversation for right now.
What's the action item out of that?
I think you're gonna check with.
I'll reach out to Chris Forsyth and see what they used as their ranking for giving to childcare, considering they gave quite a bit to childcare, specifically to childcare centers, and then I can bring that back to you.
And how much money are we even talking that's available for childcare?
Well, and so I said that this morning,
40-some thousand.
$42,000, $43,000. So that's why, the model of working with a granting agency to grant out a certain amount of money for these reasons may be the easiest way to impact childcare.
It wouldn't be long term.
It would be, yeah, and we could even say that. I mean, when you give money to the community foundation, for instance, you say, okay, this is what this money's for, and this is what this means, and then they grant it based on what your expectations are. And so if you said like, we want this $40,000 to be granted to childcare agencies for one-time expenditures for whatever, it would be up to them to grant it based on the application criteria that this board decides is the right criteria. And then they could grant the funding. That would be the easiest way.
So you weren't talking about monies going to individual families. They were
No,
going to the provider.
yes.
Business.
So basically for the business. So, maybe a business could expand the childcare by another classroom of 12 kids, but they need $15,000 to finish the renovations to get the licensing approval. Maybe that's a granted, a grant that could be provided because now they've just added 12 spaces to the county.
So as I said a moment ago, just throwing stuff against the wall. I don't know how expensive it is for somebody to get into the business, just even to get the training and the licensing. But would that be a better long-term approach where instead of giving it to them to build a bigger facility, we're giving it to people as scholarships so that they can go out and get trained and open their own.
And that,
They might not stay here.
yeah, they may.
Oh, but I could give money to a non-for-profit that folds tomorrow. So either way, there's going to be that level of risk, no matter how much accountability we want to have. I mean, if we were to give it to XYZ and a year from now, they call up and say, by the way, we shut our doors. Well, it's not collectible for us anyways.
Yeah,
And considering most businesses don't even make it 3 years, that's always a possibility.
That's all I've got.
And Katie?
At least it's a step.
yes. I'll call Chris. We'll go from there.
Okay, move on. To our opioid funding discussion.
At the last time we discussed opioid funding, most of the conversation was dominated by Ray Antel. And so we didn't really get into some of the other possible expenditures of the opioid dollars. At that time, we seemed to be pretty well supportive of spending a certain amount of that money on a body scanner. I met with the nice person from MAC and regarding opioid that Tim brought up this morning. And she was like, wait a minute. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, wait a minute. And so I went and got a legal opinion from Matt because of her hesitation. And she expressed the hesitation of both MAC and NACO regarding the same thing. And so that's why I went to Matt to get that opinion. He was like, no. And so that was going to be really a big portion of the opioid dollars. And so now, because that's out of the equation, I wanted to get back to some of these other things that could potentially we could spend opioid dollars on. I did speak with Dan and I invited him to today, but he's out of town for spring break. And so he wasn't able to be here today. He's going to come on April 11th. But his big thing is that he believes a lot of the funding should go to the research first to really demonstrate the need in Benzie County. So he said to me that the public health group, or like association, are sponsoring a lot of this research and data collection in other parts of the state of Michigan, which is helping to guide the spending of opioid dollars for the different counties. And that's what he stressed here. And he said that the public officers or the public health officers in this region are really speaking together to try to get more of like a regional approach of doing research and data collection to really get the need on paper before pursuing and spending a lot of money on other things. That's how Dan put it to me. And he's going to come and speak to that as well on April 11th when he's back. But
Who's
some of
Dan?
the
Dan
sorry,
Thorell.
Dan Thorell,
Who is he?
public health officer.
He's he's
Oh, he works for.
he's ours.
health department.
Oh,
Health
okay,
officer.
sorry. Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't realize you didn't know. So
Yeah,
Dan Thorell, he's
our
going to
Dan
come
over here.
and meet. But obviously there's other things that were on the list, including the drug court position, and Ken Hilliard would like to come speak on that excitement. There's the kinship coalition. There's an additional TrueNarc device for the sheriff's office. There's funding MAP programs and transportation services and such. I know the MAP programs are being heavily pushed by the folks in Lansing. They want the money to go towards those programs. I know that's being pushed really hard by a lot of organizations.
Administers it.
Dr. Custer would administer that, who is our physician up the hill. And so she can provide me a proposal for that. She has one ready for me. I just haven't gotten it from her yet because of other issues, but she can provide that proposal if we wanted
Like
her
a
to.
Suboxone clinic or
It's medical.
medically assisted treatment.
There you go. Yeah. And so Lieutenant Smith can speak a little more on that program if you'd like him to, because he's had more of the conversations and has been involved, up the hill more than I have. But yeah, it's a medical assistance treatment service. And it's for the folks who are released in those days after being released from the jail.
I'd appreciate it because quite frankly, I'm a little lost in the
Can you
conversation.
come up and talk about it, Lieutenant?
This doctors, are they out of Ludington area?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Dr. Custer is our physician for the jail. We identified a need for when the inmate leaves the jail. They don't have any treatment until it could be up to 3 days till they get into the MAT program from Central Wellness, from wherever else we have. I know Central Wellness is the big one.
Yeah.
For our community. So Dr. Custer can't prescribe them 3 days worth of medication without a follow-up. So what this provides is a follow-up from when they leave jail till till they start the treatment in the community.
It's like the GAP program.
Right.
Mhm.
And
And
it's
it-
separate from the jail because they're released.
Right.
And it prevents withdrawal until they can get programmed.
What it does is it prevents, well, it assists them.
It's
from
relapse.
relapsing.
Yeah.
So it
relapse.
gives them something to steady them and curb the withdrawal until they get into, or they can meet with they're already enrolled, but it takes a few days from when they get out, get in.
And when they've gotten through the withdrawal period, just having been incarcerated?
Not necessarily.
No, it's like, it's the same thing with nicotine. They'll spend a year in the jail and on the way out, they're smoking a cigarette. It's just something that's built in them that's,
Mhm.
So when they leave you, theoretically, they've been through a rehab program, but they relapse easy.
very, very easy. A lot of times the ride has something for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is, a lot of people want to get clean and they do well in jail, but those 2 or 3 days,
Mhm.
we lose them.
I gotta go back to this, with the scanner. I was a little surprised that it didn't qualify.
I was too.
I guess I don't know what qualifies and what doesn't. And you're saying there will be an opinion that comes out that'll document that for us?
Yes. I have the opinion. I sent it off to the sheriff's office first. I haven't sent it to all of you. But he's saying that it wouldn't meet it.
So I'm wondering if we could in this discussion, I know we want to talk about opioids. But can we also have the discussion about the scanner? If there's any other monies available to fund that somewhere else?
It says discussion regarding body scanner and item C.
Yeah, I had it as the next item.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So that program is a program that's being highly supported by the different associations because they find it's a very successful program and it fits perfectly into that.
By Vice Chair Rhonda Nye at one. Worker/deputy.
Oh, I turned on the voice activated option.
Better turn that.
It's reading the minutes back to me.
Is it off?
Benzie County.
He's gonna be. It's gone.
Okay. So that program is very successful and it fits that definition of remediation, those sorts of things. So that one's being heavily pushed. And we can get a proposal and we have somebody in place who Dr. Custer has indicated to me, and she's probably indicated to both of them that she's rolled this program out in other areas that she works. She's been a physician for many, many years and she was married to a law enforcement individual for many, many years. So she's been in this realm for a long time. And so it's something that she could easily put together and roll out is how she indicated it to me. But obviously there's other things that the money can be spent on when it's regarding opioids. Again, the True Narc device, the drug court program, additional educational materials. We could spend it on data collection and research as Dan Thorell is recommending. There's various other things. And so I guess what I want to hear from you today is where are you leaning as far as spending this money?
May I, Chair? I just went to, or got back from a field trip at the Cadillac Jail and EMS we did. And I asked Lieutenant McDaniels there, he was giving us a lot of the stats. I asked if they had a body scanner. He said, no, we don't have a body scanner. They use their money other ways. And with, I believe he said it was like 90+% of the people that they arrest and bring in, it was drug related.
Mm-hmm.
The revolving door was 80+% of people coming for the same thing happening. And so the next question was, what was the gap? What could be done to make it successful so it's not a revolving door? And what he said was that in between program, exactly what you're saying, but even longer after that, keeping them transitioned. So to keep them from falling back into their addictive behavior with whatever. And just to say, they had what do you call it? A machine there, didn't buy sodas in it. You got Narcan. That's what they had there in the jail. I was amazed, but
Vending
But-
machine.
yeah, a vending machine. And he said that would be the most beneficial in his perspective. Would be the education, making sure you had that in-between program that could transition them, whatever you want to call it. And he probably has more stats and everything. I know we're not Cadillac, but I thought it's similar. And apparently we have the same drugs, which the sheriff, you would know better, that they have problems with in Cadillac too. So
That recidivism rate though is incredible. What's ours, Dan, you know?
I don't know.
I can tell you that I've sat in those meetings with corrections and they're experiencing a really high number. 85% return. I bet you don't, you don't think you're at 85%.
drug related somehow, I don't know. I didn't ask him to break it down and maybe that includes alcohol. I don't know.
And I know that's not your number, that's theirs, but
Yeah.
anyway,
But that in between to help them transition, and I see heads in the audience there.
well, the funds, it really, I mean, they should serve one of two purposes. Either safety for law enforcement, people that have to deal with these folks each day. And I say law enforcement, I also mean like EMS. Or to reduce the number of users. Got to be kind of one or the other. And probably reducing the number of users is a much bigger lift than providing a safe atmosphere for public safety people.
I could see a division of those efforts, though. I mean, to think that you were trying to have impact on both fronts, keeping our first responders safe with whatever equipment they need that's allowable, and having a program. I mean, we need to remember that Central Wellness does provide the opioid health home that requires that patients be Medicaid funded. But it's something that's out there. This is a whole world that we're not really privy to on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to rely heavily on the people who are. And I think the health department's going to have a lot of input. I think Central Wellness is going to have a lot of input. They're going to help us make a good decision. But it makes sense to me to try and divide it. Research and data.
That was what he
I know, but
kept
it's just
circling back
like the
to.
impact, we know there's a problem. It's been studied for so long. I mean, it doesn't take numbers on a piece of paper to tell you there's something that needs to be addressed. So that's a little.
I was a little disappointed
Yeah,
because I know you had said and Gary about, great conversation. And he said he had these great
It
ideas.
was a conversation. I just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I called him. He's like, well, data and research. And I was like, oh, great idea.
well,
just-
and you could give us the data, right?
Of our.
Of ours.
Mhm.
And that's what we're concerned about, ours.
Right.
This data collection, I'm curious, is this a fee-based service that they
I
would
bet
provide?
it is.
He made it sound like basically fund the research. So it would fund whoever, some subject matter expert to do the research on the community.
Okay, so we'd spend a certain amount of money on soft costs that never really directly affected the issue.
No, you're
No,
good.
I welcome this.
Really?
This is the point of a study session.
Yes.
So that staff can-
Supposed to do. Yeah.
The jail works with Wayne State University, who studies all the opioids in the area and everything else. And it's grant funded and we get all that for free. I can put Katie in touch with them.
Yeah, because maybe we can give that to the health department and that would fulfill their request for that.
So we work with Wayne State right now with our stats. And I've got a meeting coming up with them next month to get even further into this. But I can get Katie in the loop and we can do this together.
Yeah.
So she can pass all these stats to you, but it's something we're doing right now.
And
For
they'll
free.
do Benzie.
They do,
For
yeah.
Benzie County, it's all the counties that want to participate can participate, but most do. So you'll get not just Benzie, but all the surrounding counties data as well.
But
I mean, we
can-
want to be a good partner.
And maybe that would fulfill
Yeah.
what Dan is looking for.
Because Rhonda, I would agree with you. It's, we don't really need to pay for a study. We kind of know the big picture. You know, we got an abuse going on that affects first responders and it affects families within our community.
Mhm.
I don't need a 15-page report or
Right.
more to tell me that.
I was swayed by the drug court conversation. It felt like that was being really productive.
And I
Okay.
can, yeah, that, it's been a
Success stories.
great success story. And honestly, that was when we were doing our brainstorming, that was one where everybody was like, yes, that would be a great expenditure. Sarah as well was in that conversation and she thought, yes, for sure. And so I can tell you that was one that was very broadly supported by all the staff around the table.
Speaking from, I'm going to be heavily swayed by what you folks think, what you think is the best idea. I mean, I'll welcome input from the health department and central wellness, but at the end of the day, you're the front line.
Is there anybody else that should be in that conversation that we would benefit from? Like me,
I mean, the hospitals,
yeah, I know you've already talked about central wellness.
The schools, would the schools have that information
Right.
on family?
So the schools kind of come into piece when we're talking about the educational materials and the prevention and, you know, classroom programming and school resource officers. That's really where the schools come into place.
But they would also know families that
Yeah, but they don't really give up that information. They can't.
you don't have to have the name.
Yeah.
But if you have stats, just numbers,
And they can tell us how many kids are like living, you know, with,
the kinship
Yep.
kids.
exactly. So
Yeah, we don't need names. All we want are numbers, right?
they're very finicky.
Oh,
well, I think this is a different challenge than the childcare does, and that I think we're gonna have, you know, an abundance of areas where this money could go. And so we just wean that down. On select.
It looks like over the course of 18 years, we're gonna have what, $200,000 to $300,000? Did I read that correctly?
Well, that was just for those 4 small settlements this morning.
Okay,
It's a lot more money for the other one.
got it. Okay.
Yeah,
So what I was looking at was just for those.
those
that-
4
those
settlements.
Okay,
Yeah.
So if we were to
13.
say, you know what, we've heard from the sheriff, we've heard from Lieutenant Dan that this program for those 3 days is something that, because we've received opioid money already, correct?
We have about $100,000.
Right. So, and Dr. Custer saying, I have the model, I've done this before.
Yep.
Would this be a program we would facilitate through Dr. Custer, or she is contracted through Central Wellness? So we would have to have that arrangement through Central Wellness.
It would be specifically with Dr. Custer and the sheriff's office. We already have a contract with her and essentially it would be an expansion of that contract or a separate addendum to that contract specifically for the MAP program. So she's a physician and she owns her practice and we contract with her and her practice for the services in the jail. So this could be either an expansion of that or it'd be kind of part of that, but it'd be with her. It wouldn't be through Central Wellness. It would be specifically with Dr. Custer.
I would just like to add that this talk has been going on for a couple of years,
A long time.
but our funding mechanism was the issue.
Mhm.
Because we couldn't add to our contract with her with our inmates because they're no longer an inmate. And it was just a weird sense of separation, you know, so everybody's on board, but that last
It's the
piece
money.
of the puzzle is the cash. And that's where we may be in a different position
Mhm.
now.
This
Could
has
we
been
have
talked
that
about for a
estimate,
long
what that
time.
would look like, what the costs would be associated?
Yep.
Putting a program like this in place, would everybody be open to
Yeah.
hearing what that
Yeah.
would be?
yes.
Would you like Dr. Custer to come and talk about it, or would you just like her to provide a proposal?
I'd love to hear from her.
Okay. She's very nice.
Yes, very busy, but she'd
Say, is she available?
would-
Yeah.
be open to come in, I'm sure.
I would be curious to know what the cost would be per individually,
Client.
because I'm assuming it's based on the individual she touches, not a flat fee. right?
Yes.
each
Correct.
case would be different.
Yeah, right.
And would it be prudent to get the same kind of response from drug court to find out what their needs would be to make an expansion there? I mean, the money doesn't do any good sitting in an account.
So I have Ken on the calendar all ready to come April 11th, Ken Hilliard,
Okay,
to talk about the drug court program and the expansion of that by a couple of members. Realistically, we can't just, that program can't blow up because we have one person and,
Sure.
but realistically, we thought we could expand the program, maybe 4 to 5 individuals. And so Ken's already on the calendar for April 11th to come and chat with you guys. And so I'll see if maybe Dr. Custer can also come the 11th as well. And we could have the full conversations then.
so just,
Can I say one thing about the drug court? It sounds like when I was in the courtroom and I sat through some of the drug court things, that was also for people that were out of the jail. That was their help. That was their support there. And one of the things I remember one of the individuals said was, it's the loneliest time for me because I can't go back and be friends with the people I knew before because it would put me back in to that system. I don't want people that knew me before to know that I went down the path of having drugs. So you had no one to rely on except these drug court vigils. It was a very beneficial program for them because they felt like they had no.
So I'll see if Dr. Custer can come the 11th. Ken's already planning to come the 11th. And so after hearing from them on the 11th, maybe we can have pretty clear direction for spending our first opioid dollars.
You would have them come in the afternoon session?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
right, we will have time to assess it and see if it's really having the impact that we
Want it to.
expected it to have.
Yep.
And then we can either continue to support it or pivot. Or, I mean, we have a lot of latitude there.
Yeah.
To make sure we do something that's effective.
The only risk is if some of the plaintiffs file bankruptcy, I mean, but you can't base your model around that. You have to assume they're gonna pay.
And a lot of them are paying. So the settlement agreements give them the option to pay annually, lump sum, every 5 years. There's all these things. And the reason we got such a big chunk this first time around is because some of the smaller distributors paid in lump sum to get it over with. And so we got all 18 years payments this first year for a couple of the littler ones.
Sure.
So that's why we really don't know how much we're going to get every year because it just depends how they repay. Some of the really huge ones are like Cardinal, and McKesson, they're gonna pay annually because their settlements are huge compared to some of the others. Whereas the smaller ones are just paying it and getting it off their back.
I know this is further down the road, but sounds to me like the gap between the time they're released and the time they get help has to be addressed. And we need metrics and results. If we're gonna throw money at something, we need something that's gonna work. And I'd like to hear those before we get carried away. So that's just me.
I think
I
I'm
think it's a
good.
good start.
Are you guys
right?
good?
Anything else we want to cover on this topic?
I think
We're not still having this conversation 6 months from now.
No, I think we gotta get going on this. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Okay, let's talk about the body scanner.
So the next one is the body scanner. And so we kind of touched on this earlier about the opioid dollars not being allowable expenditures for the body scanner. But based on discussion with staff and you as a board, I believe that this board was pretty well supportive of that device, the purchase of that device. And so we wanted to figure out other ways to pay for that device. And so in the memo that I provided, I talked about some of the other ways that we could work to pay for this device. The device would be $125,000. MMRMA can provide a grant of $43,000, which brings it down. If we lease it, it puts the payments around the 15.7, giving us then time to work towards a 2% tribal grant to try to bring it down even further. Another thing that I learned just yesterday is that using the lease option, we don't even have a payment due until 13 months later. So we'd have the device in place and being utilized for 13 months before the first payment would even be due. And so that would give us plenty of time to look for other grant sources. But if the grants don't come through with the 2% grant and such, there are other funding options that we can look at. Potentially the LATCF money. That's $50,000 this year and $50,000 next year. That was unexpected, that has no limitations in spending. It just can't be spent on lobbying. So there's that potential. We also have the inmate funding from Grand Traverse County. That was another thing that we didn't plan for, that came about to us. And so we are receiving revenues from Grand Traverse County for the housing of those inmates. And obviously we're recouping enough that it's covering our costs plus a little extra. So there is a potential to utilize some of that funding as well towards the lease payments for that device. So if we were to go forward with it, I don't see that there'd be any issue with covering the lease payments for that device. The lease would be 1 through 7. And then the years 6 and 7, there's an additional cost for maintenance and upkeep of the machine, which is another $9,750 for that. So it'd be on top of the 15,700 for year 6 and 7. Once the lease is gone, then it would just be the maintenance cost that's being paid to upkeep the machine until it needs replacing. I'm told that the lifespan of it is pretty long, but they're fairly new devices. So the true lifespan isn't truly known because they're fairly new in the departments, but the lifespan is anticipated to far exceed 10 years.
Who's got the closest one to us?
I guess is Washtenaw closer or is Marquette? I think Washtenaw is closer. Yeah, I think Washtenaw closer.
Let's go to Marquette.
Yes, and Manistee is also working to obtain a scanner as well.
But there's only a couple in the state.
I think so. For this company specifically, there was just a couple in the state, but I want to say there's 6 or 7 counties in Michigan who have body scanners.
Do we know if they are pleased with the results or?
Yes.
They are?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think some of the larger counties are looking to purchase more than, I think maybe Midland is working on getting a second one now. I think it's Midland. It's one of the larger
It's
counties.
closer than Washington.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different device, though. They don't have this specific device.
Oh,
Katie,
like for us, it's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
It is.
It reduces liability.
Yep.
in so
Completely.
many areas. You had me at hello on this one.
so the math though is not working for me. If it's 125,000
Mhm.
and we get 43 on a grant, leaves approximately 80 or 82,000. If you take 15,750 times 7, that's 110,000.
Those are the numbers provided to me by the company.
Yeah, but would you agree that doesn't make any sense? Because there only should be 80,000 amortized over 7 years, not 110,000.
Let me pull up the document.
he's got to look at those numbers going.
Yeah. I have nothing else to contribute.
I have nothing else.
Do you think you would be approached by other sales or officers wanting to use the device? Something we could rent or, I mean, charge a fee to use? Okay. Right.
That would be that's one of the thoughts that when we entertain the 2%, they like to get community involvement that's outside of,
So it would just be a professional
it
courtesy.
would be our region, if you will,
Okay.
that would have this ability. If there was something that they needed,
But housed here,
Good help.
we would house it here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. We'd be responsible, would be the owners of it. All the training would be on our folks. Yeah,
But what I hear you're saying is that it's probably not a fee-based opportunity for us. It would just be a courtesy and help score better on the grant.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
That's my take.
I would have to reach out to Bethany and ask her for the discrepancy.
Yeah.
Because her proposal matches the numbers I put in my memo.
Not surprised, but yeah, if you would ask, I'm probably missing something here. But I'm not sure, I don't see where it is, but
Yeah,
Yeah. We had to do it a couple times to get it drilled in our own head, so.
yeah.
Pay for Benson nasty care. That is there.
Well, then you'd have added cost, staff time and fuel and vehicle maintenance to drive back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah. It's more, in our mind, it's more of a case by case, like, hey, we've dealt with this person. They brought it in before. We're gonna run them up the benzene, check it out. You know what I mean? Like
Is there
that
any,
type of thing with mutual aid.
is there any way to fool the machine?
pool the machine.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. It's
Okay.
pretty, if
Good to know.
Dr. Custer can get the images sent to her. So, I mean, right away, so that's another.
So what's a consensus? We were all on board. And this was talked about as far as being covered by opioid dollars. Now that it's not, and there's still a way to, is this something we could have Katie move forward on for the full board meeting the next time we meet, if the numbers came in where we needed them to be, or do we want further discussion? To discuss it more in a couple weeks.
my only hesitation is I want to have all the tools available. For public safety that we can, but I thought this was more prevalent. I didn't realize there's only a couple of counties that had it.
Just the brand.
Just this brand.
Oh, this is brand. Okay, so other communities are using scanners, just.
Yes,
yes,
but from a different
many of them
manufacturer.
are.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me ask the question differently. Out of 83 counties, how many counties are using scanners, do you think?
Oh, less than half, though. There's not a ton.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're working.
It's mostly the big counties.
Their work.
Midland County, Washington County, Wayne County. Not a lot of the more rural counties are using them. We don't. Grand Traverse, Leelanau doesn't. Nuevo doesn't. Mecosta, I don't think does.
So if the
There-
brand that we're looking at is only used in Washtenaw and
Okay,
Marquette, why aren't we looking at the other suppliers for a bit as well?
We did.
We did.
Oh,
We
we
did.
did, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, and this,
Significantly more cost.
yes,
They didn't give us anything extra.
Same
You could see
result.
The difference.
Yeah,
So-
we felt it was more for less. I mean, we truly feel this particular device is more fits our needs.
it's much more user friendly too, based on what she went through with
The
myself.
floor space it
and-
takes,
It's
very
smaller
minimal,
square foot.
um,
Mhm.
and on and on. Interestingly enough, though, out of all the counties in the state, there are, I believe, 3 in the UP. You know, not
Just this.
one of these, but other devices, even in the UP. And most of them are funded with ARPA money, I believe. So.
And this one, this product is used a lot in other states. And so while it's not as popular here yet, a lot of other states actually go to this company versus the other companies that we received quotes from as well, because of its usability, because of the size and those sorts of things.
Kyle, do they have 3 up in the UP because that's influenced by the number of prisons they have up there, do you think?
I don't think so.
Well, what I'm wondering is like in Marquette, there's a prison. And
right.
I'm wondering if the sheriff's office is sharing it with the jail or the prison.
They didn't indicate that to me at all. That, not that they wouldn't have access to it like we were talking about. That was not an indicator to me, though, when I talked to those sheriffs up there about it,
Okay.
about their device. So.
Bob, I'd be curious. I haven't heard you say much about this.
I'm just taking it in, but that comment right there, if there's a prison there. I don't see a need for one at a prison because these guys have already been through the legal system many months before they're gonna end up in a state prison.
Mhm.
So why would?
Yeah.
It's not like they're coming up to get arrested and they come off the street and they can't go to jail.
Do they have people visiting them, going through it though, before they see the prisoners?
I don't know. I don't know if they still, I don't know if they do face to face. And I don't know those angles, but I know that our folks are 99% of them are coming right off the street into our facility, and they all know where they can hide it and where they can't, you know?
Yep.
And we've had several incidents that by the grace of God and our employees saving lives with the Narcan, we have not had a death, but we've been very, very close. I will say that.
Oh, so Rhonda, to answer your question for me, if there's a way to fund it, I'd like to see us do this.
We also have the remainder, 40-some thousand dollars of the ARPA money left if we wanted to direct it to this endeavor too, and that would be and we would have distributed or allocated all of the ARPA money at that point. Just a thought,
Plus we have the marijuana money.
Yeah.
Which,
of which only $40,000 from 22 had
for a
been,
one-time expense.
Well, now it's in fund balance.
right.
And Art, to clarify.
Yeah.
So the project costs minus the MMRMA grant would be 88,000. They finance it, but it's with a 5.696% interest is why it comes out to the 110.
Generally, at least they don't have a rate associated with it, but
Yeah, so
I got it. That's the difference.
Yep.
Finance.
Show another 40,000 up in money. We're down to 40,000 and change.
So if we take 50 plus 43.
from MMRMA.
Russ will come from that extra dispensary.
We could, I would like to explore the option of the 2% grant though, because
Absolutely.
between the three of us, we're pretty confident we might be able to get it. And if we just go ahead and buy it, now we're trying to seek reimbursement, which doesn't look great. Whereas if we leased it and haven't actually paid for it, then they may give us the funding.
Like the number of those grants, if you already own it,
They,
that's a disqualifier.
right.
Hey, Shelley, are we gonna, and I know this isn't sustainable, but are we gonna make more interest income this year than what we budgeted?
It could get better, it could get worse.
I got that. Well, I think this year the rates are gonna stay where they're at or a little bit higher. I'm just trying to understand how much additional revenue is out there that wasn't known to us at the time that we did budgeting.
Great.
Right?
But all it's doing is I had to take a picture on September 30th as to what that looked like and book it.
I got that, but
So, I mean, we lost a lot last year, but we're gaining back what we lost last year. I mean. Tell you, we are gonna earn more interest than we have in prior years,
yeah,
but how much of that offsets last year, I can't tell.
well, you know, what I hear you describing as a balance sheet issue, what I'm talking about is revenue coming in. And if, just as an example, if we budgeted interest rates to be at 2.25, and now they're at 4.75 or higher, that means we're gonna make that much more interest income. That's really what my question
I
is.
don't have many investments at that level. Because market is that, doesn't mean that.
Okay,
So my investments are much more conservative
uh,
and more in the 2 to 2.5 range.
really. That, I understand that.
I will say we did receive the draft audit from last year. And we did, I do believe we've improved in our budgeting. And so if the track record continues, we'll continue to improve. Last year's audit at the rough numbers are showing that we missed the revenue line about by 200,000 and the expense by about 100,000. As in, we underestimated revenue by 200 and we overestimate expenses by 100,000. Last year's audit, it was over 400,000 for revenue that we underestimated, and it was over 200,000 for expenses. So we are getting better at our budgeting because those numbers are coming closer together. So if we keep up on that, we should be doing okay. Now, what Shelley's saying is very true. I mean, what we lost, we got to gain back and then keep going. But as long as we keep on this budgeting track that we're on, our numbers are coming closer together. So we are getting more accurate in our forecasting. And so with that, there's still general fund balance too that could be used towards that.
Well, we've been spending like a bunch of drunk sailors, so
And our fund balance still grew.
my question is, if we go ahead and try for the 2% grant, we get it or don't get it, at that point in time, if we pay this off, do we eliminate the 5.5%, 6%?
Yes.
interest?
Yeah,
That's what I wanted.
there's no penalty for early payoff.
Oh,
Okay, looks like-
So yeah, so we could, that's why I'd like to lease it so we can try for this 2% grant. And then we could pay it off if we do or don't get that grant. Yeah, there's no early payoff penalties.
You'd be saving $30,000.
Yeah.
So talking about interest, it reminds me to talk to you about FDIC insurance in light of the recent banking thing. In January, Kelly and I had a conversation with our main bank to initiate a sweep so that all of our deposits with them, they sweep out every night and come back every morning, kind of thing. And they're all FDIC insured. And it's difficult for me to do that individually because I would have to have, we had $9 million. 4 times 9 is 36. I'd have to have 36 banks at $250,000 a pop to manage just for the savings of one account that we have. I'd need another person for that to manage those funds and the movement of them. So we signed up with a program that does this sweep. And it's similar to the Cedars program. Remember a few years ago, I was talking to you about the Cedars program for CDs. When I take out a CD, it's the money is credited to our local bank, but it's invested in other banks that are part of the Cedars program and therefore FDIC insured for me. But it still gives the balance sheet power of the local bank all of our money, but it gives us FDIC insurance. The same thing for the sweep program. And so when you look at the county having $20 million collectively between all of our subsidiaries, for us to have $20 million, I got to have a lot of banks and I got a lot of time invested in that. But we are probably 70% funded or insured by the FDIC because of that sweep. And all the other things that we have in place that allows us that. So I'm going to be talking to the Maples about doing a sweep their funds as well. It's another $1.5 million. They use our same bank I do, so pretty. So we were most concerned about having that FDIC number. And happened. And so I was really happy to have that in place. But the other reason that I went to them was I wanted a better interest rate than they were giving me. And I was getting about 0.75 or 0.8 and $9 million. And so going into that program automatically put it into the 1.6 range. So I doubled our interest. So
do we have anything in Michigan class? Or that
We do.
5%?
and that's where we're at about 5%.
Oh,
but that is also not FDIC insured. And that's 3 million out of 20 million. So,
good to hear that. I thought we were getting more than just 2.5%.
Right.
well, so you got 1.55 and you got 5, and you got 0.2 and you got 0.6. We're in the 2 to 2.25. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna look at, you can't
Overall,
look at one account and go, oh, whoopee, I'm a winner. Cause you got a lot of,
players.
there's a lot of accounts to consider. And a lot of varying interest rates to consider as well. But, we're working on it.
Yeah, what is it? And then what'd you call that? What's that class account?
Michigan Plus.
Yeah, how much do you have a limit to how much you can put in there? And if they're offering a better rate, why wouldn't we put more money in there?
They're not
They are not
FDIC
FDIC
insured.
Okay,
For one,
okay,
it's an investment pool,
okay.
but it is liquid cash. Tomorrow, I think between 6 entities, county level, we're at about $11 million. We could pull 11 million of our. So,
Okay.
Certainly said that with the sheriff here.
I just can't.
Look on your face. Yeah.
What happens if they have what if they end up with a problem?
Probably don't even know what their capital position is, do you?
I
That's,
we get that. I don't have that on the top of my head.
no, and I understand, I wouldn't either, but that's the big driver. You know, we hear, and I know we don't want to digress here, but we talk a lot about FDIC insurance. I'll tell you folks, it's rare anymore. In fact, you're seeing the federal government stepping in and backstopping billion-dollar accounts. But like the banks we have around here, these are well-capitalized banks. And if we went over $250,000, I wouldn't lose 1 minute of sleep.
I was fine with where we were, even having several $1 million just sitting there. I was comfortable with that because I do bank rating on the banks. And so I'm assured of where our money is and why it's there. But, it's public confidence and the lack thereof that could make or break. So, as long as we have investment in our local bank, there's a run on it. I'm a big bird, love holding the bag.
Kelly, you've done a good job for many years. I'm not questioning it. I'm just trying to understand it. That's all.
So I try to spread it around and I try to get a reasonable amount of trust and security, and they balance all of those.
Thank you.
Better than.
Are you happy with where we ended on the scanner conversation? Okay, let's take 5 minutes.
Could we just recap that now?
Oh, sure.
Kind of got lost in this other conversation.
So what I'm hearing is, next meeting will bring forward the actual official approval to lease the device. We will work towards a 2% grant as well as apply for the MMRMA grant to fund it. If and when we're awarded that 2%, we will pay it off. At this point, it doesn't sound like we have a clear direction of how we would pay it off. So at that time, I would come back to the board, since we'll be into the next fiscal year potentially, and we'll say, okay, we're going to use ARPA dollars, marijuana dollars, whatever, to pay it off.
If at all possible, I'd put a solution in place that pays for it up front. Because if you go to pay it off, they're going to use what's known as the rule of 78s, and you're probably familiar with that. That means they're getting the biggest chunk of their interest in the first 2 or 3 years. So if we paid it off in the 4th year, yes, we saved something, but not nearly what would have. And if we could save $30,000 in this transaction, that's real money.
I think the intent would be to pay it off as soon as we hear on the 2% tribal grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could even.
But I don't wanna essentially just by default disqualify us from the 2% and just say, yep, let's buy it. I'd like to at least try for that. And then once we hear from that, we can pay it off.
You might want to talk to your provider about providing short-term financing versus the lease? Because that may give us more favorable treatment.
So the lease option is provided directly from the company going to give us the device, and that's the terms that they have, and that's the terms that they give to other municipalities who are looking to lease it. So that's the option I was presented with specifically from the body scanner company itself.
And then I would be looking at least to understand what other options are. You know, so we only say 15,000 instead of 30,000, but it's still 15,000. Because we could finance that locally and
All right, we're gonna take 5 minutes and come back at 3:10 and we'll have our discussion about the strategic plan.
You're unmuted.
Okay. We are back in session. For the final topic today is our goal setting and strategic plan review.
So, we started this a while ago and things kind of got pushed around a little bit. So what is in your packet is a marked up strategic plan based on the initial conversations that we had had as a board some time ago now. This is kind of where we left off, was this marked up strategic plan. The one benefit about all this extra time is it's giving you all a lot of extra time to really deep dive into the strategic plan, which has a lot of goals. And I am hearing a lot of mixed reviews as to the strategic plan and its quality. And so, do we want to continue with this format, or do you want to scrap it and start over?
Well,
Karen, I know you had a lot of thoughts.
I do have, but I took this as my starting point and I just went through it really line by line. And, you know, things that I would change to include and be a bit broader in the vision statement. It says, want me just to start, I guess. Okay, so Benzie County's vision is prosperity and opportunity for all residents and visitors. I said that the vision should also include, since we are known for our environment here, is to be good stewards or have something that includes about our natural environment. Protect and preserve, whatever. Instead of just the one species of. What do you think? Too broad? I was just looking at things that we are known for, and one of the reasons people come here and live here. That was the thought. The values, I thought it needs to have an equality between balanced with services, the values there. And again, good stewardship.
Do you have that as an extra thing?
And stakeholders, I didn't know if we wanted to include, and maybe I missed it, Grow Benzie or our incubators in there.
Girl Ben's
Um,
right there.
That was a
it there?
section,
Okay,
and that was a section, honestly, that I thought should be scrapped.
okay. Yeah, that
Um,
was the only.
I
note
don't know
had
why
there.
we're listing stakeholders in a.
Okay,
Because that was the vogue thing to do during that period of time when people were doing plans.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
so currently, right now, that might be obsolete to include.
I'm just telling you that from time to time, it's kind of like the buzz that people have,
Okay,
and then it goes away. And I'm certain that's why we had stakeholders, because we were trying to appeal to a big group of people in the community
okay,
to
Yeah.
buy in on this.
It's just like charrettes and redevelopment ready communities. It's the buzzword.
okay, so it might be obsolete for this point in time.
Yeah.
Okay. How will the strategic plan be used? Are these prioritized here, how they're listed?
Honestly, I don't know. If, does anyone, when you guys did this plan, was this how you prioritized them?
Or is it just?
Or was this just a list? I don't have any
I
notes
think
that
it's
says,
just a list.
Oh,
okay.
okay, because that was my only question there. Workforce, over on page 6 of 11, I would reiterate something, valuing the youth or preparing them as the continuum.
well, this is progress made, and these are examples of progress made.
Okay.
And I think
So-
most of this needs to be scrapped.
Edited.
It's outdated. It's all, I mean, so many things are outdated that they had their time and place when it was updated for the
Okay,
last time, but should the 6 what are there, 6 areas of focus?
I think I added one, so it was 7.
Yeah, there was 7. There was a 7th on the back page, but we're working off a template that we haven't asked the question, should the template be different? Update it. We're in a world of
Okay,
spending ARPA dollars. We're in, addressing our infrastructure. We're talking about public safety projects. There's just so many things that we're trying to plug these things into headings that were established in 2016.
They're old.
They're old.
In the way that we're organized, based on my experience, we should have at best 3 to 5 goals.
I was gonna say.
That's it.
Right, this should be more succinct. It shouldn't be so
Higher level,
higher level.
relying on
Absolutely.
administration to put the task together to complete
Yeah.
it.
If we're gonna revisit this every year, it should be bullet points, deliverables, what can we do this year, and then relook at it every year. Did we get it done? If
It-
not, we carry it over to the next year, and what do we add to it? And this should just get muddled down in all the verbiage and, oh, that was.
The
back in-
more general.
So at the list of being a little bit sarcastic. When this was really the county's first real effort at a strategic plan in 2017. And, the one way you can build a strategic plan is to make it look nice.
Mhm.
And this is what we got. It kind of bundled everything together.
Yeah, fair enough.
My view is that a group in any given year probably will never get more than 3 tasks really done. I'm talking about high level stuff. So if you have a strategic plan that's 3 to 5 years, you've got 3 to 5 high level things that you want to accomplish. And this governing body should not get tied up in how am I going to do it? It should just simply be administration brings you the plan, you agree or disagree. Mostly it's about, tell me how you're going to implement this plan. Why do you think this is a good plan? And then you move forward. Pardon me?
And where you get the money.
Right.
from.
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, like 3 goals, high level goals on that. That makes total sense. It would be I would see it as being very general or idealistic, if you will. And future oriented. By future, I mean like 5 something. It's nice to have the 20-year, but something that we can kind of knock off as achieved or a certain level of it as achieved.
It's when you get beyond 5 years, it's so fuzzy. There's so many things. Who'd have ever known 5 years ago that we would have ended up with a pile of money that, trying to
COVID
put out.
happened or whatever, yeah.
But Gary said this earlier, and I think it's an important component. I'll use different words, but it's measurable. You've got to be able to, whatever you've done, I need to be able to see the results, not just have you tell me I got the results.
Some of this is feel good.
Yeah.
And that's just fluff. That was,
Okay.
And it's outdated, feel good.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that's how they were doing things back
I
then,
get it.
folks.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, but we're trying to plug a current model into an old template. And it's not fitting.
Okay,
for me.
that's why all my notes.
Yeah, I'd rather spend more time on implementation, less time
Okay.
on, because
Right.
like the big picture view, you would say, I want to improve public safety by the year 2025.
Mhm.
All right, and then you drill down on what is it that is measurable that it improves public safety.
Right,
Right.
we want to address space need for different departments. We want to expand infrastructure. What are we gonna do about that? These are, I mean, we could do probably 10 bullet
Awesome.
points of the things that really are gonna move the county forward. And I did the same thing you did, Karen. I started, just looking, okay, cross this off and well, this sounds better. And then it
Yeah.
just kind of went, oh. No, start
Well,
over.
the
I-
3 ideas, I think, and with it really. The goal, like you said, Art, public safety, we will improve public safety or whatever. That's the big goal. You have all kinds of people that the county has working, professionals, that's what they're doing for you. So it's the goal.
And it could be a number of things that
Good,
make that happen.
good.
Just as an example, something we talked about this morning, public safety, by improving this parking at the railroad point or whatever that is, right? May not sound like much, but if I can improve the parking there, I reduce the risk of accidents, people getting hit, et cetera. To me, that moves it forward.
Mhm.
And you said something that I hope makes the list, and that's space planning. That we really have never, we had a nice project list and it just never happened. And as you've heard me say before, probation's still in the same position they were in. I know they haven't been in there, but they're gonna be back.
Oh, no, they're back.
Oh, are they? Okay. So, I would hope that would make the list of 3 to 5.
So, what I'm hearing is we're essentially gonna scrap what we have and kind of do what we did last year and establish some high level goals and then work tasks that staff need to do.
It doesn't need to be as complicated as it was in 2017.
Or no, I'm saying what we did last year. So like we established some high level things and then my office ferreted it out. And honestly, that's where we're at these days. And like, if you look at other county strategic plans, that's where they're at with it. They have 4 or 5,
Okay.
3, 4 or 5 high level things. And then the staff ferrets it out. And that is really where strategic planning is. You go to Grand Traverse County, they have literally a table that they made an Excel spreadsheet as their strategic plan and their goals. You go to Jackson County, they have an 8-page document full of pictures. The first 7 pages is all about how great Jackson County is.
Okay.
Page 8 is the 4 things they're working on, and that's it. So that's really where strategic planning is at. So I'm fine with that, but how do you want to move forward? Do you want my office to move that forward? Are you wanting to partner with somebody like you did with the original strategic plan to put together a document? What are you thinking?
I jump in on this again. I really don't think we need an outside facilitator. Correct. Because let's get rid of the warm and fuzzy stuff. Let's talk about the things that really are meaningful. I would like to see those ideas come from this body.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm suggesting that is, unlike a lot of communities, our peers, guys, we're out everywhere.
Yeah.
I realize the general public doesn't know that, but you're doing 12 meetings a month and you're doing 15 and we're reaching a whole lot of people. So if 7 of us are sitting at this table, my God, we should have a pretty good understanding. And if there's an area that we don't feel comfortable in, then let's bring in that expertise. But we're talking about 3 to 5 high level things. I couldn't imagine we couldn't figure that out.
So we could just maybe email you. We can brainstorm individually and just kind of email some ideas.
I think it's more fruitful to do it in this setting. What I found is when we go away and say, yeah, email me your ideas.
Mhm.
It doesn't
You guys
happen.
don't.
Okay.
So we're gonna meet again in a study session in 2 weeks
So
after
come
the
in
next
with-
meeting. So should we have our list of, let's decide how many we want to be our priorities. We'll get the whiteboard out again.
Okay.
And and then we have to decide too. We have a mission statement in here. Are those gonna be included?
Toss it.
Typically they are.
Mission, vision. So the 3: mission, vision, and values.
You gotta say, that's just all warm and fuzzy
It is.
stuff.
It
I
is,
have,
but-
I've seen groups spend 3 days trying to put together
Yeah.
mission statements and it didn't mean a doggone thing. The mission statement's real simple. Improve the community that I'm elected to. That's all the mission statement's gotta be.
Provide a clean, safe, economic place for people to live.
We're just gonna get tangled up and get lost if we start building vision
It tries to
statements.
get too warm and fuzzy and that's not what we need to do.
So I think what we do is at the next meeting, you guys have your list of things. We'll pull out the board again. And we'll narrow down to the high level topics with tasks that staff can do. And
Yes.
that's what we'll put together in a plan. And then the vision and the mission, the pretty stuff, that's what we'll add in after we've already established our list of goals and vision. is we'll throw that on top, because if you're gonna publicly put this document out to the community, it does make sense to have some of that pretty stuff in the packet.
Yeah.
But let's not weigh it down by focusing on that first. Let's get the meat done and then we can tweak the mission and the vision.
Well, mission and vision, they're used, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
They're used to, the public is used to seeing that format.
They are.
That's one thing. And
Okay.
usually mission and vision, I mean, if you read one,
They're the same thing, written differently. And if we do it after you've established the goals and high level focuses, it's easier to put it together because you already have what you're trying to do. And now you're just condensing it to an elevator pitch.
And I'm gonna go ahead and plant a seed that one thing that's gonna be on my list, and I've talked to a couple of you about it, and I can't take all the credit, looking at you, Shelley, because this is a big idea of yours. Give you a lot of credit for this. But it's the idea of a community development person for the county. We need to start, listen to Ed Hooper talk today, and the question was asked, who's gonna administrate this 300,000? You have another 3. We rely heavily on volunteers. We have a great pool of volunteers in our community, but we need somebody at the county whose job is community development, who is the glue to all these siloed areas, whether it
Yes.
be the land bank or EDC or Parks and Rec, who takes the administration of grants off the volunteers' back and off our staff's back. It's not their job to administrate these grants, and that's who it falls on when these volunteers walk away.
Mhm.
And we could make this position very broad and hone it down to what it needs to be. I throw it out there as just, it's an idea that I
We've been
heard
tossing
pitched,
it
and
around.
it made sense. And it's something that I think we need to take a closer look at and develop and really turn into something that could benefit the community. We're too siloed with our committees, and there's no glue there. And there's,
I think I came up with the phrase community development coordinator is what I canned it. We've been talking about this for a while. We talked about it last budget year and decided to set it aside. We're a county that's very, very heavily reliant on grants, and it is amazing that we have not slipped up so far. I mean, the amount of grants that we use to support our county is very high in comparison to others. And the fact that we don't have a professional staff member that's paid and knows how to do that, taking care of it, it's amazing we haven't slipped up. Because we all do our best and we do, I believe we do great work, but it's not our strong suits. And just like you said, these different silos, we need somebody who brings it all together.
And I'm not opposed to that being the end result, but the plan, the strategy, to be in the strategic plan, it's got to be higher level.
Yeah.
It can't be hire a community coordinator. Although I think that's probably the end result. The task is, that's the task.
Yeah.
The goal is just shooting from the hip, improve
Collaboration.
collaboration among the community to access additional revenue or something like that. That's the big view.
Mhm.
So grant administration is different than grant management.
Mhm.
Grant management is that boots on the ground part where they fill out the form, they take the picture, they talk to the engineers, they're out in the field. The administration part of it can fall to an administrative office for managing the financial component of it at the end or throughout the process. But I end up wearing multiple hats. I'm the boots on the ground. I'm the glue the 3 parts together to make that part work and to do that. And somebody walks away from their appointment at the end of their term, and there goes the cohesiveness of that project. And someone else has to pick that up, but the new person doesn't know anything about it. And the other 4 people that used to be there don't care about it.
Right.
But yet the grant's not done and we still haven't got the funding, you know, we're starting to trip.
Mhm.
We're
We
starting,
make mistakes.
we haven't fallen yet, but we're tripping and stumbling. And so
We just have so many.
Yeah, so it's just getting to a point where there's a lot going on in our community and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And in many places, we're duplicating our efforts. Brownfield wants to do this thing. Well, Land Bank could be a big part of that, but they didn't get invited to the table or vice versa. And so if you have somebody that's got the glue that puts those two together, Land Bank Brownfield is a huge tool. It's like a ratchet compared to a wrench. It upscales that markedly, but you got to have the person that can put that glue together. So between Land Bank and Brownfield, they could be much better off. If somebody could be that lead person where the trail could come with some things from their grant, and Parks and Rec can bring from their grant, and Remon can bring from their grant, and somebody's there that understands those grants and can manage that, then the final financial part of it can come from my office. But I can't do all of that and coordinate all of that and then also put my other hat on and be the administrator on the back side of that. It gets convoluted. So having that link where everybody has a place to go for that, super helpful.
Yeah, the county for years has relied on volunteers.
Well, we had some support for EDC with Dave Niger in his office. And, you know, we had some levels that were gaining support, or that were given staff support for that. And then we eliminated those positions.
Mhm.
And so then it was a free for all. And so it's just hanging out on whoever has that
What's the time?
skill set at the moment in time that you're standing there.
Mhm.
That's not in our best interests.
And I thought we were asking way too much of Dave anyway.
Well, we might have been, but he had some glue to it and that was helpful. And nobody really cared about the glue until
It was gone.
it's already gone and now you can't build it back up. So and it probably was a lot of me saying those things, but I'm wearing half of those hats. And I'm telling you, it's not the best.
It's
And,
not
and
fun.
does Kelly, you know, if Kelly ends up taking over for me, does she have the same skill set that I have? Yeah. Then all of a sudden, what if she's different and her focus is different? Now who's going to do that? And
Yeah, it's a part of fiscal responsibility is having that person in place, and especially for a grant heavy county. We're successful with grants because we're a great place. I mean, we do
well, and
with
we're in
grants.
need of grant money as well, because we're
Right.
little enough that we didn't have that financial support for so long.
Right.
And so, and we have these resources that grants lend themselves to. And so we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, but we just need that staff support
And
and the glue to put it together.
we may even be overlooking some opportunities with grants simply because we
We
don't have. the
definitely
resources
are overlooking.
To chase them, you know?
Yeah. So I just offer that, and I thank you for supplementing the
But that's
conversation.
kind of a different person,
Say again, please.
the grant writer.
Yeah, grant writing's so
Different than the
different.
community development person.
Yeah.
So that's like once you get this underway, then you look farther out in your vision and put that person in play.
And there is such a career,
Yes.
Grant writer?
no, not grant.
Community
writer,
coordinator is
development?
huge. Yeah.
They may call it something different somewhere else, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I was just
Economic
wondering how
development,
defines-
community development. I mean, yeah. You're looking for somebody with a planning background, a public administration background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, there's lots of people out there like that,
Worth
but they
gold.
make a lot of money.
And they make a lot of money for the county
Yeah.
or whatever.
Managing those projects.
They make a lot of money.
If you bought one of those, they'd pay for themselves in grants.
And efficiencies.
Well, there's also some grants that you can bill administration fees from.
Yeah, like the True North grant that we're managing right now, all of my time is billed.
Yeah, because I think you can take up to 10% of the
5% for that one.
5.
Mhm.
and use that as administration.
Yeah, so all of my time gets billed against that grant.
We really
for
don't
my
need to have
administration.
on our payroll a grant writer, because there's people out there when you have if this
Right.
coordinator sees an opportunity, then they have a relationship with the grant writer, and that's when they bring them in.
Well, and different grant writers for different reasons. Some have more
I
knowledge
wouldn't
of.
close the door on this person having grant writing skills, so, I mean.
Oh, no, they could probably do basic grant writing, but you do kind of have to have that subject matter expert. There's certain people who are really good at state grants versus federal grants versus parks grants versus, so it really does, you kind of have to pick and choose your grant writer depending on your
The
topic.
narrative is a big component of
Story
your
is-
success in that grant.
Story is everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You cannot have the greatest need and get the grant because your story is better.
The Michigan Association of Land Banks just received 120,000 out of a potential $200,000 grant for blight elimination. Mostly because we didn't have shovel-ready things. But in that is written in up to 16,000. Well, up to 16,000 of $200,000 for administrative costs. So a lot of grants have that written in because they know that the paperwork end of it is a lot for some communities. So
See, I'd have this same person potentially networking with elected officials. You've got to have that right relationship. So we've got 2 state reps that cover our county now. Let's take advantage of that. These people can, to your point a moment ago, they'll pay for themselves. Don't expect it to pay for themselves in the first year, but by the time you get to the 3rd year, I think you're probably seeing that opportunity.
Right. Well, how many, when we come back to meet for our next study group to talk about this? What do we want to have ready to offer?
I'd like to see us agree that we have no more than 5 to start with.
Okay.
So 3 to 5. And honestly, I think that we've already identified 2 of them.
Mhm.
I don't know what we call this communication director, from a strategic view, but find the right words for it. You're pretty good at crafting words, and then space planning. And whatever 2 or 3 are left.
I like it.
So for April 11th, if each of you could have a couple of things written down in mind as far as high level focus areas. If you want to also come up with some tasks associated with that, that'll help add to the conversation. We'll narrow it down on April 11th to the top 3 to 5 things. And then associate some of the tasks with that, and then we'll pretty up the document and be done with it.
I think we should shoot for 5.
And you think it's this group that should come up with the tasks?
It's helpful. I know last year, our office came up with some of them, but you guys came up with some of them too, to help kind of just shuffle things through. So if there's things that come to mind that you're thinking this could be a good task or a good thing for someone to work on, it just helps add to the conversation. It may go nowhere, but it just helps add to the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a direct task, but it could be have administration do something that's related to this or.
come up with a problem, come up with some solution.
Yeah.
Well, the task is always measurable.
Yeah, so if there's just ways to add to the conversation.
So I got my 2. What are you guys gonna do with yours?
Yeah, but you needed me to craft up better words.
I think
But
I
you need-
offered those.
You needed me to craft better words, so do you? I said he needed me to craft.
I thought I heard Rhonda giving Shelley credit for one.
I did. This since I got here,
And now I'm
but I
stealing.
got no credit.
I'll throw one out there. We need to discuss IT somehow.
Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna call Dodie because yes, we need to figure out some IT issues as well as buildings and building department. We need to explore both of
department
those
is using-
contracts.
Using our old contractor.
Oh, really?
IT, right?
No.
No.
The
IT Right was bought out by VC3.
Oh.
So they're IT Right, but they're VC3. Yeah.
was before that. What was the name of them?
Why?
That's it.
They were.
Okay, we have our task for the next meeting. I'm gonna open the last public comment. close last public comment and look for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
3:40.